Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, and today we are back with another exciting tutorial. So if you have seen a previous tutorial on Grafana Loki and Promtail, we have set up the Grafana Loki and Promtail on a centos machine, right? So if you have not seen that, please have a look on the video description. I have given the link for that tutorial. So what we have done in that tutorial is like we have done the complete setup of Grafana Loki and Promtail. So what we did is like we use the log file to be indexed using Promtail. So we have used some var.logs which will be sent from Promtail to Loki and from Loki to Grafana as a data source, right? So what we do in this tutorial would be like to set up the same kind of Grafana Loki and Promtail but on a Docker. So not on a CentOS machine. What we will do is it's an easy setup, not like a CentOS where we have to download and configure the packages. So it's more simple setup, like we can easily spin up the Grafana Loki setup using Docker containers. So we'll be using the same kind of setup where we'll be having log files which we'll be trying to use using Promtail, which will be running on a Docker container. So we'll create a container for Promtail, and we'll be using these logs which will be configured in the Promtail config file, and that will be sending to Loki. So Loki also will be running as a Docker container, and from Loki we'll be using Grafana instance which will be also running as a Docker container, and we will connect the Loki as a data source to Grafana. So in the Grafana then we will be able to see all the data which will be coming from Loki, and we will be able to create dashboards, and we'll be able to get the complete information. So to talk about this Grafana Loki tutorial, what we'll be doing, the step-by-step process would be like we will learn about this config file for Loki and Promtail. So we'll download some sample file and we'll do some configuration changes. So we'll make some changes in the config file to send the logs to Loki, and we'll also create a Docker container for Loki, Promtail and Grafana. All three containers will be running, and also we'll be setting Loki as a data source in Grafana, and we will analyze this data which is available in Grafana, which is the Loki data source. So you can use create dashboards and all those things. So we will show you what data is coming up into the Grafana, then we will be able to do anything with that. Okay, so before I get into the actual process on the demo, so I would request you, like if you are new to my channel or if you haven't subscribed to my channel, click on the subscribe button. Also like my video, share and comment. So let's get started in the demo for this Grafana Loki Promtail tutorial. So what we will do is, this is the Docker machine. So if you don't know how to set up Docker setup on a CentOS or Ubuntu, please have a look on my tutorial. I have shown you how to set up Docker on CentOS and Ubuntu as well. So you have to have a Docker machine so that we can download Docker images and we can set up Docker containers. So before I do that, I also need to download some config file, or you can create your own config file, but I want to use some sample config file. So if you see this, I'm inside Loki, created a folder called Loki, and there is nothing inside. Now let me download those config files. So I'm going to use wget, and this is the config file which I'll be storing it as loki config.yaml. So if you see, I have one file now called loki config.yaml. I'll give the link for all these things in the video description, so you can download it from there using the same link. So this is inside the Grafana GitHub, so it's downloaded from there. Let me also download one more config file. So this one is called for Promtail, so I'll download it. So if you see, this one is called Promtail config file. So let me clear out this. So let me show you that there are two files now. One is loki config.yaml, another one is Promtail config.yaml. So if I read the files, you can see it have quite some contents there. So you can go through it, like what port is listening and all those things. Okay, so I don't need to make any changes over here, so I'm not using alert manager and everything, but it's a standard file for that. And let me also read the other one, which is for Promtail. So now if you see in this Promtail where we are running some URL which where this data has to be pushed, which is for Loki. So if you see this the machine or the IP address has to be put in here, because to which Loki setup we have to send. Since we are running a Loki as a container on this machine, I have to map that machine's IP address or the local host over here. And here also target, from which target we want to scrap the content. So I'm going to use the same host machine where I want to scrap the content for var logs doc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this file a little bit. So let me edit this file. Okay, so I'm going to change the URL for Loki. So let me edit this. So I'm going to give the IP address. So this is the IP address for this host machine on which I'll be creating a Loki container. So if I access this IP address, I should be able to access Loki. And I'm also want to scrap the content for same machine. So I will change this local host to the IP address. Okay, so and if you want to take some other log files, you have to change the scrap config files to that locations. Okay, so or you can create separate configs for that as well. Okay, so that's all we want to do in this setup. So we just want to change this setup. So let me just save this file. Okay, so let me save it. So if I read this file, this is how it will look like. So this would be the location where it has to push the content to Loki, and this would be the scrapping. Okay, so that's all for that. Now we can create the containers. So first I'm going to create the Loki container. So I'm going to run this command, which is for creating Loki. So I'm using docker run -d for detach mode, and I'm going to give a name for this container as a Loki. And if you see, I can use two things. One is the current folder where this config file is located, because what we are doing is we are using a parameter.config.file where it will be mapping to this mnt config loki.yaml, right? So it should be here. So or you can do is this current directory, or since my let me clear out these things. So if you see this current directory is called root /Loki, right? So you can use the pwd command as a variable to get this location, or you can directly map this location where you have this config files. Okay, so there are two ways you can do this. I will show you that. So let's use the one command where we are using the pwd variable. So I'm going to run this command. Okay, so I'm going to map the volume as this location where this config file there, and I'm going to set up a port 3100, which is for the Loki, and the image is from Grafana Loki, and this version is 2.2.1, which is the latest version. If you have different versions, you can use that as well. And I'm going to use the config .file. So which file has to use this config? So it should be this file. Okay, so let me run it. So if I see docker ps, you can see the container for Loki is running. Now let me create one more container for the Promtail. So for Promtail, I'm using the similar command. If you see, I'm using docker run -d name Promtail, and here if you see, I've used this method, like I'm using the volume as root /Loki, which is the folder where I have this config file, right? And I'm also mapping some log location. So if you want, you can do that. If you don't want, you can remove that as well. And I'm using the Grafana Promtail image, and this is the where it's the config file. So if you may see, like it's mnt config Promtail, actually you may map root Loki, but you should not do that, because this one is mapping into the internal the container, which is mnt config /Promtail -config.yaml, right? So that is why we have to map that location over here as the config file. So let's just run that. Let me clear out. So now if I see, you have two containers running, one for Promtail and one for Loki. Now if I see docker logs and Promtail -f, you can see it has started the trail routine, right? So it has shown which logs, it's mail.log, yum.log, right? boot.log. So those are all sent now. So let me clear out, and let me also show you the Docker logs for Loki, so you can see this. So now you can see it has uploading tables. It has already created the index, so that's also done. So in order to check, what are the metrics from Loki, you can check it in the web browser. So using the IP address 3100/metrics, and also you can check the status whether it's ready or not using /ready. So let me show you that. So if you go to your browser, and if you put this IP, this is the IP address for the host, local host, where you have the containers running, and this 3100 is the port number for Loki. Now if I send the metrics, you can see a lot of metrics it's showing up, right? And you can also change this metrics to ready. You can see it stays ready as status. So that means the Loki is set up and ready. Now we can try to set up Grafana as well. Now let me create a Grafana container. So this is the command. If you don't know how to set up Grafana, I have completed a beautiful tutorial on explaining each and every command to set up Grafana as a Docker container. You can have a look on that in the video description, which I will link the video for that. So you can see, I'm using few volumes. So if you don't use that volume, you can ignore it. You can directly set up with the port number and the Grafana image. So let me run that. So it has been also created, and you can also see that it has created quickly because I have all the images already available in this machine. If you don't have it, what will happen is you have to spend some time. It will start downloading the image, then it will create the container. Okay, so now you can see all 3 containers are running, one for Grafana, one for Promtail, and one for Loki. Now let's access Grafana as well. So to access Grafana, you need to use 3000, the host machine, and 3000. Since it's the first login, the username would be admin, and also password will be also admin. So let's type the password as an admin. So it will ask you to set up a new password. You can give a new password and submit. Okay, so now you are inside the Grafana homepage. So these things we have seen multiple times, right? How to add a source. So you can just go to Loki, and you need to enter the URL for Loki. Okay, and the URL would be almost the same, only the difference would be it should be 3100, right? Let me just copy this IP address, and it should be 3100. Okay, so this should be the URL. Okay, and let's go and save and test. So now you can see the data source is connected and labels found. So now if I go back to the home page, now you can go to this explore. So these things you have seen, like we already shown in the previous tutorial, how you can run some query and also create dashboards, right? Now if I run this query for var.em.log, you can see we are getting some output, right? So it has shown a lot of logs here. So we are getting the contents from Loki. You can also change these logs with the different boot.log. So let's try that. I think there are not much content further. Let's try with some other logs. So you can also run with this job command, job var log, so you can see the outputs are there, right? So you can use also this to create some dashboards. You can go to dashboard, and you can check for the data source as Loki, and you can do some configuration over here. So you can see some logs if you want, so you can see some output, and you can create some dashboard, those kind of things. So I'm not going to explain those things over here. So I have created beautiful tutorial to show you how to create dashboards and everything using Grafana in those tutorials. So you can check that. So in this tutorial, I wanted to show you how you can configure Loki, Promtail, and Grafana using Docker container. So we are able to see how you scrap the content, also push it to Loki, and how to set up that as a data source in Grafana as well. So that is all for this quick tutorial. So if you are having any queries or something, you can just send a message. I will respond you back as soon as possible, or you can reply to this tutorial. and I would request you to click on the subscribe button to watch for more videos, and you'll be notified when I upload a new video. So you please click on the bell icon, so I would be happy for your support. So keep watching my channel and support by subscribing. So thank you for watching.